Hi there, this is Marie from Creations Photography and Design. Today I'd like to talk to you about text. I've seen several questions lately in the forums that people are having trouble making the text behave just exactly the way they wanted to do it. And the newer versions of Photoshop are coming out with some new ways to work with text a little bit. Most of this, what we're doing, will work with any version. What I'm going to call live preview only works in Photoshop 2000. I think Photoshop CC is where it came out. Perhaps it was Photoshop 2014. But anyways, most of what we're talking about can be done in any version of Photoshop, although I am working with 2014. We're going to start out here. And just because I'm tired of working on white, I've thrown a few background textures on here. And I got these from Adobe Paper Texture Pro, which you can get off the Creative Cloud or through Russell Brown's website. Well, there's a couple of ways that you can get text on the page. One of the ways is simply just to choose excuse me, simply choose a text, a size, and I think I'm going to want something a little bit bigger than 18, so we'll try 30. Choose a color. I'm going to choose for my color this brown that I have already in my background color, and you can set whether you want to have it the margin on the left, if you want it centered, or if you want it to be right aligned, and I'm going to use center. And generally this is how I do it. I just click and start typing. Hopefully I can type correctly. And then it just keeps typing on and on and on and on. It will never, unless you hit the return key or the return or enter key, it will never paragraph. It's a line. Now we can still change our justification. We can justify it left justify, right justify, or center justify. But unless we go in and actually manually hit return or enter, it will not paragraph. So let's leave it not paragraphed for the moment, and we'll move this up out of the way. You notice, even though I have my type tool active, if I'm away from the text, I get my move tool. So I can move this anywhere I want on the page. But again, when I come up to it, you can see the cursor is back. Okay, now what? Well, I'm going to go ahead and commit this particular text, and I'm going to start a new one. And this time, instead of clicking, I am going to click and drag. I'm going to drag a box out the size that I want to have my text in. And this time when I type what I'm going to say, and apparently I can't type and talk at the same time, it automatically moves it into the next line. It just goes to the end of the box and then automatically puts it on and puts it into paragraph form. Well, rather than sit and type until I fill this paragraph, I am going to go up to something that came out on CS6. Go to Type, Paste Lorem Ipsum, and it automatically fills it with this Latin looking text. Kind of neat. But now you can see how a paragraph will look done in a box like this. Now in order to change this, however, we do need to highlight all of it. And I could have done, rather than just highlight it by clicking and dragging, I could have hit my Command or Control A key, and that's select all. Or I could go to Edit, select all. Now here I can go ahead and change things around, and you'll notice as I move up and down this area, we're getting a live view of what text we're using. Kind of neat. And my text probably looks different than yours. I have gone into my Type menu, okay. I have to commit this before I can do it. I've gone into my Type menu, and I have changed my font preview size from medium to huge. Now if we look at it now in medium, it's much harder to see on the menu bar, but it gives us a little bit smaller box to work around. We can also change, if we highlight something, we can change specific words, specific letters. We can do all sorts of good things like that. But we have to have it selected. One way that we can get around that is using the character panel, and that would be up here, on the options bar, or we could go to Windows, Character, and this will get you the same thing. Either way you go to it, from here or here, and
right click and set flag or unflag. That's all there is to it. Just right click. Thanks. And you can do it shift select all. Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.
so we can now we don't have anything selected. We can still go find any sort of text that we like. And it still shows a live view as we go over them. We can also set font size in here, and let's set it all to 30. Now again, if we want to set something specific, we can highlight it. But the nice part of this is that we don't have to highlight it to change it. We can change the color to something else, perhaps a warmer brown. We can also play around with the spacing in here. And you'll see under size, I have nothing here because I have two different sizes in here. So let's put it back to our regular 30. And this is line spacing, the next area, or leading as it's called. This is set for auto. We can increase it by choosing a positive number, or we can decrease it. Well, I guess this isn't positive or negative. We can increase it by choosing a big number and decrease it by choosing a smaller number. And that's decreased to the point that it even overlaps. So I'm going to put it back to auto for the moment. Another thing we can do is select this all. So we tap in it with our type tool, controller command A. Now we hold down our alt or our option key and we tap the up arrow key to make it smaller, and we tap the down arrow key to increase the leading. And this shows it probably better. You don't have to guess. And since this is the first way I learned how to do it, this is usually how I change the leading. And see here it's 38. I like that. We can change how far apart the letters are in our character panel. This one gives us both negative numbers, and let's go negative 100. So they're just really tight together. And let's go positive 100, and it spreads them out a little bit. I'm going to put this back at 0 and go ahead and select some text here. And now I'm going to hold down my alt or my option again and do my right arrow to space the letters farther apart, and left arrow to space the letters closer together. And you'll see, I'm surprised that we ended up at 0 again. I'm going to change here to perhaps I'm going to find a sans serif here. Maybe this one, that will work. And sometimes you want certain letters or numbers. And let's type here some numbers. Well, I gotta tell you, I'm surprised here. Let's try this one. Whoops. Okay, there we go. This is going to show what I wanted. I'm sorry that I didn't figure this out. I used a different font this time. You will see that if we look at 2014, the 1 and the 0 and the 1 appear to be a long ways apart. If we put our cursor in between, we can also use the leading, or it's not leading. This is kerning. And I want them to be a little bit closer together. So let's try minus 10. Let's try minus 50. Let's try minus 100. You can also go back down to your Alt Option arrow key and arrow left if you want them closer together, and arrow right if you want these spaced a little farther apart. It gives you some opportunities to change things just a little. I think this one might need to be kerned a little bit. And I think this 2014 looks a little bit better than this spacing. So remember, you don't have to space it all together. You can space it individually. Good. I'm going to turn these off for a minute. Oh, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and commit this. And we can change. Nope, I'm going to need my text tool active. And this little thing right here lets us, this is the one I want. I shouldn't do this late at night. This is toggle between vertical and horizontal text. Now, it's interesting to me that we read from left to right, and if we go into vertical, it reads from right to left. So this isn't always a good option to change. Perhaps we want to go over here to our text tool and choose the vertical text tool and actually do some typing along the line. Now here I'm going to turn off, now is the time to come to the aid of the country. I'm going to turn off this, and I still have the vertical text tool, but I'm going to make a box for it, and let's see what happens. And see, the box makes a mess. It starts us at the left. Not particularly helpful. But if we just do a click, then our quick red fox, and I'm going to hit the enter or return, should come back up to the top. Does not. Instead, it goes backwards. You learn something new every day. Well, let's look at the other options we have in our text tool. I find if I right click on these, it's faster than waiting for a hover to get this up. Now I'm going to do the horizontal type mask tool, and I happen to have in here a zebra image, and I want to make a mask so it looks like the letters are zebra typed. And for this, I want something that's really, really bold and quite large. And I wish now that I had my huge on. Well, this looks big and bold, so we'll use this. And I want, at least 72. And I'm going to click and start typing. Now, I do want this all caps. So I'm going to go over here and choose all caps. I'm going to space this out a little bit farther. And what I'm going to do, here's something. If you look closely here, as I hover over these titles, I get a hand with a double arrow. This means I can click and slide. It's called scrubbing. So I can click and slide and make these farther apart. I'm going to use my move tool to bring this around. Gosh, and it doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to go back in here to my character panel, and I am going to take this particular option is the horizontal scale, and I'm going to try this at 75%. So it squishes, it makes the letters not quite as wide as they were. You'll also see that our vertical is at 150. Here's 100. And I'm going to actually try it at 200. Better. So it's still bold and still nice. So I'm now that I've got it arranged and I've moved it around to where we have all the letters are on the zebra, I'm going to go ahead and commit this text. And and you'll see it made a selection of the text. I'm going to try something else new. No, I won't. I'll try that when I'm not recording. Alright, so I want to make sure my zebra image is selected. And I'm going to get down here at the bottom to the rectangular donut and click. And now only the zebra only shows where the letters are. Now on this particular background, the white kind of blends in to the background. So I want to add a little effect here, so I'm going to add first a stroke. Yours may look different than mine. I have set my default for 4 pixels on the inside, blend mode normal, color black, and I've clicked this little make the default. So every time I open this, it has the same settings. Now, in I think CS6, the default color changed to black. Before that, the default color was red, and you always had to change it unless you made it your own default, what you wanted. In this case, I think 4 is a little bit big, so I'm going to type in 1. And for this text, 1 isn't quite enough, so I'll backspace and type in 2. And I think 2 will get us enough to delineate the words from the background. Let's see, here's 4. Nah, that's not bad either. And I'll look at 3. So this is all personal taste, and when you've got it the way you want it, you can say okay. But as long as I'm in here playing with FX, let's throw in a drop shadow. Now, you can change the drop shadow with distance, or you can come right in here and drag it to where you think it ought to be. But Photoshop's default drop shadow is a little too harsh. So I go up to opacity and slide that opacity down. And this looks more like a shadow. This makes a really rough, harsh edge to the shadow, and I prefer mine a little softer, so I generally bump up the size. And by bumping up the size, I need a little higher opacity than I would if I had a sharp shadow. And when we're done, we'll say okay. Great. Now we also over here have a vertical type mask. So let's click on something that would be fairly large and I wonder what this would look like. This is my bone. And actually, I think I don't want to have a capital letter there. I want a small letter. And these, I'm going to select it all, and I'm going to try and get the letters a little closer together. I'm going to hold down my Alt or my Option key and my left arrow to get them a little closer together. And when I go ahead and commit that, I have the selected arrows. I'm going to turn on this other green background here and add a drop shadow. And this already had an effect on it. I'm just going to leave the effect the same as it was. Matter of fact, I like this effect better than I like the other one. So I'm going to take the drop shadow and hold down my Alt or my Option key and drag the drop shadow from the green over to the zebra drop shadow. I see I moved it entirely. Instead of holding down your Alt and Option key, dragging it, there we go. It copies it rather than deletes it. So we're getting some neat things going. Let's turn this back to a regular horizontal text tool. And let's put some text on a path. The easiest way to draw a path is the pen tool. I click, and then I drag to another location. And then I click and drag to make a curve. And by holding these ears out, I can make all sorts of different types of curves. And then when I click again, I have a nice curve. Well, let's get my text tool. I'm going to hit the T key, and I'm going to zoom in again so you can see what's going on here. Now here I have a regular cursor, and as I go over the path, you'll see how the cursor changes to a path tool. So now I can start typing. And let me zoom back out so we don't ruin our eyes. There we go. Now you see we went too far, so if we get away from the text, we have the move tool. And then I'll go ahead and commit this. But I really don't care for that particular type of text. So let's find something that looks a little bit better. Let's use this beach. And I am going to set things back to 0, back to 100, but we're still having a problem here where it isn't quite right. It's too close together here, so I'm going to tap in here, and I'm going to use my Option or Alt left or right arrow to space this out a little bit. And I'm just working by what looks good to me. Oops, that's a little too much. Now here there's too much room, so let's make that a little bit smaller. And that a little bit smaller. Now we could be using this tool as well, but I'm a visual person. I would rather see what I'm doing than guess. Okay, that looks a little bit better. If we go down here to the direct selection tool, and direct selection tool comes in black, which is the path selection tool, and white, which is the direct selection tool. I do want the direct selection tool, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to rearrange this just a little bit. I'll put this down, maybe put this up a little bit, make this not quite so steep. There we go. And then tap my move tool and move this around. This looks a little bit better. We can also tap P for the pen tool and draw a shape. And I'm going to start here. I'm going to try and draw a heart. So I'm going to start at the bottom point, come out to about the halfway point, click and drag, come back to the center, click and drag till I get the shape that I want. Now here I need to, if I clicked and dragged from here, it would start at that point. And I wanted to go back and have a mirror of this curve. So I'm going to hold down my Alt or my Option key and take this little ear and bring it up so it matches the other ear. And now I have a curve that approximately looks the same as the one on the other side. And then back into zoom, when I get close, when it comes together, you'll see this little circle. And I just click here and I've completed my path. Again, we grab our type tool and let's start here. And it looks like this is going to be a little bit big, so let's make it smaller. And well, let's play with it. We're working with hearts and hearts are red, right? So let's use a red text and see what happens here. Now we're a little bit out of season here, but you know, you do what you can. And then we'll go XO, 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 XO. And we have, again, done text on a path. You probably noticed when I was doing that, we also had another option as we grabbed our text tool. And let's go over here to the shape tool, and I have the ellipse tool, and I'm going to make sure it's set to path. I am going to hold my shift key down while I click and drag because I want this to be round. Okay, back to the text tool, tap the T, and I am going to zoom in again. And as we cross the path, we get the on the path symbol, and as we come in the path, we get the type in this symbol. So I'm going to choose to type in this path, and I do want it centered. And I'm going to zoom back out again. And I think I want a smaller type. Now let's try 14. And rather than have me type, I'm going to go ahead and go to paste my lorem ipsum. And once I've done that, we can perhaps a little smaller yet. I guess I'm going to have to commit this to make this happen. And the smaller the text is, the better it's going to fit inside the circle. I might want to spread the text out just a little bit or bring it in just a little bit. Or you might just want to leave it at 0. But we have this cool. We have inside of a circle. But let's go back to that direct selection tool and click on this and drag it. Well, now we have a teardrop, and we can even make that teardrop really, really pointy if we hold down our Alt or Option and change these arrows. We can put kind of an odd curve in it. We could just make all sorts of changes and make it any shape that we felt like. So that's kind of a, if you've got a place that you need to tuck in some text, there you go. So we've done all sorts of texting. We've got some really interesting ways to text. It doesn't all have to be just plain brown. Well, let's see. It doesn't all have to be plain text. We can add all sorts of other nifty little things as we go along. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have picked up a few hints for working with text.